What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. Things you didn't know about Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan remains one of the most feared and respected conquerors of all time. His biography is shrouded in mystery and contradiction, but the facts about Genghis Khan are that he rose up from almost certain death on the Mongolian steppe, united his people, and began a series of gruesome conquests that claimed millions of lives and changed the entire course of human destiny. For a figure so polarizing, many see him as an engine of positive change, while others see him as a bloodthirsty monster. Much of what we know about him is from outdated history books or Hollywood portrayals. The real Genghis, which wasn't actually his name, was a contradiction. A religious man who prized loyalty yet slaughtered millions, including his own family members. Many details are known about how his army operated, but almost nothing is known about his death or burial. And his brilliance is as underestimated as his lust for bloodshed is. Here are all kinds of Genghis Khan trivia and other interesting things you probably didn't know about this emperor, mass murderer, and changer of the world. You're probably pronouncing his name wrong. While most Westerners pronounce Genghis with a hard G, that's actually incorrect. In Mongolia, the G is soft. So if you want to be accurate, you should pronounce it Chinggis. Genghis wasn't his birth name. The man who would unite the Mongol tribes was actually born Temujin, meaning of iron. His name was said to have come from a Tatar tribesman who had been captured and brought home by the boy's father. The name Genghis Khan wasn't bestowed on him until 1206, when he was 44 years old, as part of his coronation as the Khan of all Mongols. Temujin was born destined for greatness. Most of what we know about Temujin/Genghis comes from the secret history of the Mongols, an anonymous record of the early days of the United Khanate. According to that book, written for the Khan's successors, Temujin was born sometime in 1162. Yasukai was the chieftain of the Borjigin clan, the Mongol tribe's ruling class. His father was Yasukai. The boy came out clutching a blood clot, an omen that he was destined to be a great leader. Whether this is actually true is anyone's guess. Temujin had a rough childhood. Despite being born destined to be a leader, the secret history of the Mongols makes it clear that Temujin's early life was brutal. When he was just 9 years old, steppe rivals killed his father, Yasukai, and when Temujin tried to take over as leader of their clan, his own tribe kicked him and his family out. This left his mother, Holun, to raise 7 children alone on the steppe. As an adolescent, it's likely Temujin took the life of his own half-brother in a dispute over food. A few years later, rival clans abducted him and his young wife, holding them as slaves until Temujin escaped. He married young and his first son may not have been his. Around the age of 16, Temujin took his first wife, Borte, in a marriage arranged by his father before his passing. Borte would become Temujin's principal wife, but by no means was she his only wife. The parentage of Borte's son, Joki, is unclear due to her kidnapping and the fact that he was born 9 months after she was taken. Joki would grow to become a great military leader, but was excluded from Genghis's line of succession. The couple had 3 more sons, Chagatai, Ajadai, and Talyui. Temujin/Genghis had many other wives and children. While Borte was Temujin's empress, he took a number of other wives. Many of these women were used as war trophies, and not all of the marriages appear to have been voluntary. They bore him numerous children, including a number of daughters whose names weren't recorded. For historical purposes, only Borte and her 4 sons are truly significant. The Mongols of the 13th century were in chaos. During the early days of Temujin's conquests, the various tribes of the Central Asian steppe were scattered and mostly had control of their local area. The tribes warred often, routinely stealing horses and treasure from each other, along with taking slaves and concubines. Many of these conflicts were spurred on by China, which kept the Mongols warring among each other, and not attacking their own country. Nobody knows what Genghis looked like. Very little is known about Genghis Khan's personal life or physical appearance. The scant information that was written at the time is unreliable, and there are no contemporary sculptures or portraits of him that have survived. Most accounts describe him as tall and strong with a flowing mane of blonde hair, blue eyes, and a bushy beard. However, 14th-century Persian chronicler Rashid al-Din claimed Genghis had red hair and green eyes. Al-Din never met the Khan in person, but these striking features were not unheard of among the Mongols. Temujin's first conquest was the tribe who stole his wife. Shortly after Borte and Temujin married, the rival Merkit tribe kidnapped Borte. Temujin would not let this aggression stand, and teamed up with the Karyid tribe, led by Togrul, who was a blood brother of Temujin's father. Along with a blood brother of Temujin named Jamukha, Temujin led an army that destroyed the Merkit tribe, absorbed their warriors, and slaughtered their women. By the time Temujin was crowned Genghis Khan, the Merkits were completely gone. In the latter part of the 1100s, Temujin vanished for 10 years. After Temujin was beaten by Jamukha at the Battle of Dalan Balshut in 1186, we know nothing of his history for the next 10 years. It seems inconceivable that a major figure like Genghis Khan would have such a blank space in his biography, but nobody knows where he was or what he was doing. It's likely he was hiding in China, as his patron Togrul had been exiled, and Jamukha had taken control of his holdings, but it's not known for sure. Temujin united the Mongol tribes in 1206, taking the Khan title. From 1196 to 1206, Temujin went on a rampage, destroying his enemies and adding their surviving soldiers to his ranks. Finally, he turned his attention to the Nayman tribe, which had been his chief enemy for years. The Nayman were crushed, and at a tribal gathering called a Kurultai, on the banks of the Onon River, Temujin was elected Khan of all Mongols, choosing the name Genghis. It is still unknown where this name came from. Genghis had a complex relationship with culture. Genghis Khan is likely to have been illiterate, but established a tradition of Mongol literacy. He created the yam, a great postal system meant to send written orders to the far-flung outposts of his empire. He also adapted an official script in 1206 upon his election as Khan, and kept written books of his laws, a complex and far-reaching system of edicts called the Yasa. Diplomatic exchanges with other empires became a crucial part of Mongol conquest, as Genghis would send letter-bearing emissaries out to empires he sought to sack, demanding they surrender. At the same time, Genghis and his generals ordered the destruction of countless works of art, priceless artifacts, cultural sites, and precious objects. Chinese, Russian, Persian, and Muslim traditions of printing, sculpture, and painting were subjugated, with their masters almost always slain. While other Mongol leaders appreciate the cultures of this sedentary people they wiped out, the Mongols themselves left little in terms of cultural heritage, and almost no written works. Genghis Khan never spilled royal blood. When Jamukha was turned over to Genghis Khan, the great leader honored his enemies' request to be slain in the way Mongol leaders honored the leaders of their foes. That is, his blood would not be spilled. In one of many such executions that Genghis would carry out, Jamukha was slain by having his spine broken. After that, he was buried with a golden belt that Genghis had given him when they became brothers. Other beaten leaders, both Mongol and those from around the world, were put into sacks or carpets and trampled, honoring the tradition of not spilling blood. A lot of Genghis's greatest generals were enemies before him. Mongol tribes beaten by Genghis had their soldiers absorbed into his army. Among the battles in which a tribe was beaten was the 1201 Battle of the 13 Sides against the Tajit tribe. Genghis was hit in the neck by an arrow, and when he demanded to know who had fired, one Tajit admitted to being the shooter. Stirred by the archer's boldness, Genghis made him an officer and nicknamed him Jeeb, or Arrow. Jeeb would go on to become one of the Mongols' greatest field commanders during their conquests in Asia and Europe. The Khan relied on his 4 dogs of war. In the secret history of the Mongols, the chronicler claims Genghis Khan had 4 generals that he called his dogs of war. Besides his enemy-turned-confidant Jeeb, he had Kublai, not the famous Mongol leader Kublai Khan, who was Genghis's grandson, Jelm, the man who saved Genghis's life when he was shot by Jeeb, and Jelm's brother Subutai. Subutai, a truly gifted leader who is said to have personally led 20 campaigns, conquered 32 nations, and won 65 battles, taking more land than any conqueror in history, was his best general out of all of them. Genghis turned Mongol warriors into the best in the world. Steppe horsemen began learning how to fight and live off the land as children. When they came of age, they had mastered how to ride, shoot, fight, and go for days at a time without provisions. They fought using both swords and the composite bow, which could fire an arrow up to 350 yards, much farther than anything else that existed. They carried everything they needed with them and rode with multiple mounts, often cutting one open on the leg to drink its blood for sustenance. The skill, bravery, and tenacity of the Mongol warrior rivaled those of any modern army. Genghis was a religious man. Genghis Khan passed laws declaring religious freedom in conquered lands, and even granted tax exemptions to places of worship. The Mongols generally had an exceptionally liberal attitude toward religion. While they subscribed to a shamanistic belief system that revered the eternal blue sky, the steppe peoples also included Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and others. No one was persecuted for their faith. The Great Khan also had a personal interest in spirituality. He was known to pray in his tent for multiple days before important campaigns, and he often met with different religious leaders to discuss their faiths. Once ruler of the Mongols, Genghis conquered northern China. After his election as Khan, Genghis turned the unified Mongols against China. First he sacked the Western Xia dynasty. Then came the Jin, his former allies, who lost hundreds of thousands of troops to a Mongol force 10 times smaller. In 1215, the Mongols sacked Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, leveling the city and decimating the population. After 10 years of combat, the Mongols had all of northern China under their control, leaving a swath of bloodshed and plunder in their wake. Populations were enslaved, then either executed or used as human shields. He killed 1 million people after China. Conquering the Western Xia and Jin was a matter of survival for Genghis. He had no intention of war with the powerful Khwarezmid Empire in modern-day Iran, but it became inevitable after the Khwarezmian Shah executed Genghis's ambassadors and massacred a peaceful caravan. In a war lasting just 3 years, from 1218 to 1221, the Khwarezmid Empire was annihilated, with its population culled and its beautiful walled cities sacked. Final defeat was inflicted at the Battle of the Indus River, where 50,000 men, led by the Shah's son, were beaten and killed. The Khwarezmid Empire suffered so much damage from the Mongols that at least 1 million of its nearly 3 million inhabitants perished, the majority of whom were executed methodically with swords or axes. He split his force into 2 and brought Russia to its knees. After destroying the Khwarezmid Empire, Genghis split his army into 2 units. One, which he led personally, headed back to Mongolia, but not before laying waste to northern India. The other, a small unit of 2 Tumen led by Subutai and Jebe, headed west, toward what is now Russia, pursuing the Khwarezmian Shah. They didn't catch him, but they made history anyway. In a raid of such power and destructiveness that it's never been equaled, 2 of Genghis's dogs of war sacked Georgia and Armenia, and defeated a gigantic Kievan Rus force at the legendary Battle of the Kalka River. In keeping with Mongol tradition, the Russian princes who resisted were crushed under a platform, their blood never spilling. Hundreds of thousands of peasants weren't so exalted, and were slaughtered. Russia itself would take centuries to recover from the Mongol invasion, and its geography was permanently changed. Genghis had to put China in its place more than once. The Xia had refused to fight alongside the Khan in Persia, which was a death sentence. Khan led a huge force against them, and crushed a coalition of Xia and surviving Jin. The Tangut royal family was executed in its entirety, ending their lineage, a problem that would soon engulf the Khan. In 1227, Genghis Khan died, but nobody knows how. During the sack of the Western Xia capital, in August 1227, Genghis Khan perished. Historians of both the time and the future are still completely in the dark as to how it happened. Some say he was slain in battle, while others claim he succumbed to illness. Still others say that he fell off a horse while hunting. One chronicle even says he was slain by a Western Xia princess he was attempting to add to his harem. After his passing, the traditional Kurultai was held, meaning all Mongol conquests were put on hold, and all leaders met at the Onon River. Bypassing Jochi, whose parentage was never confirmed, they elected Genghis's third son, Ojidai, as the new Khan. The location of his grave is unknown. After his passing in China, Genghis's body was brought back by his generals as they returned to Mongolia for the Kurultai. The Khan took great pains to keep his final resting place a secret, and according to legend, his funeral procession slaughtered everyone they came into contact with during their journey. Then they rode horses over his grave to help conceal it, and might have even changed the course of a river to go over it. Numerous excavations have been undertaken to find Genghis and the treasure said to be buried with him, but even with satellite imaging used recently, its precise location is unknown. Genghis Khan remains one of the most enigmatic, terrifying, and compelling figures in world history. A man whose name conjures up images of unstoppable cavalry charges, scorched cities, rivers running red with blood, and a trail of destruction stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Europe. Yet, for all the horror stories passed down through generations, there is so much about Genghis Khan that escapes the traditional narrative. Far from being just a ruthless barbarian, he was also a master tactician, a legal innovator, a religious pluralist, and a man whose policies, however bloody their implementation, ended up shaping the world in irreversible ways. First, if you think you know how to say his name, think again. In most English-speaking countries, Genghis is pronounced with a hard G, as in get. However, the Mongolian pronunciation is closer to Chinggis, with a soft G or CH sound. If you're trying to be historically accurate, that's the name you should be using, Genghis Khan. But then again, that wasn't even his real name. He was born Temujin, named supposedly after a Tatar warrior his father had captured, and only received the title of Genghis Khan in 1206 at a tribal council known as a Kurultai when he was elected ruler of all the Mongols. The title roughly means universal ruler, and by that point, he had already forged his way through internal tribal wars and blood feuds to unite the disparate, bickering clans of the Central Asian steppe into a single formidable force. His life was destined to be legendary from the start, if you believe the secret history of the Mongols, the oldest surviving account of his life, written anonymously by those close to his court. According to the text, Temujin was born clutching a blood clot in his fist, a traditional Mongolian omen indicating a child would become a great leader. Whether or not that's true, his childhood was marked by unrelenting hardship. After his father Yasukai was poisoned by a rival tribe, the young Temujin, still a boy, was cast out by his own clan, leaving his mother Holan to raise him and his siblings in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the steppe, surviving on roots, rodents, and whatever they could forage. The betrayal by his tribe instilled in Temujin a lifelong distrust of disloyalty, and a conviction that unity through iron-fisted control was preferable to the anarchy of tribalism. His sense of justice and his thirst for revenge would become the driving forces behind his conquests. Temujin's early life was also marked by violence within his own family. Legend holds that he killed his half-brother Bektar in a dispute over food. He was also kidnapped and enslaved by a rival tribe, the Teudi, before making a daring escape, experiences that taught him firsthand the importance of loyalty, cunning, and endurance. Around the age of 16, he married his principal wife, Borte, who would bear his first son Jochi, although the boy's paternity was questioned because Borte had been abducted and held captive shortly before Jochi's birth. Though Temujin accepted Jochi as his own, this uncertainty would later impact succession decisions, leading to Jochi's exclusion in favor of his other sons, Chagatai, Ojidai, and Talyui. While Borte remained his empress, Temujin took many other wives throughout his life, often war prizes or the daughters of conquered rulers. These unions bore him countless children, particularly daughters who, though largely omitted from official records, were often married off strategically to form political alliances or consolidate power in newly conquered regions. The early 13th century Mongol world was not a unified kingdom but a volatile collection of clans and mini-kingdoms, constantly feuding over resources, land, and power. These conflicts were often fueled by outside empires like the Jin dynasty in northern China, which manipulated the tribes to keep them weak and divided. Temujin, whose genius lay not only in his military conquests but also in his ability to reorganize Mongol society, entered this chaotic landscape. He promoted meritocracy, abolished aristocratic privilege, and organized his army in units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, breaking traditional clan lines and guaranteeing direct loyalty to him. His discipline was harsh. If one soldier fled, his entire unit could be executed. However, as a result, the army fought as a unit and soldiers would rather die than disobey orders. His first great victory came against the Merkit tribe, who had abducted Borte. Temujin sought aid from the Kariid and a powerful ally, Jamukha, a former childhood blood brother turned rival. Borte was returned after the Merkits were defeated by the combined forces. Not only would this victory bring him and his wife back together, but it would also mark the beginning of his transformation from a tribal warlord to an empire builder. But success was not linear. Temujin suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of Jamukha at the Battle of Dalan Baljit in 1186. What followed is one of the most puzzling blanks in world history. A mysterious 10-year disappearance where nothing is recorded about Temujin's activities. He may have fled to China, he may have regrouped with loyal allies, or he may have simply gone underground to plot revenge. Whatever happened, by the time he re-emerged, he had enough strength to destroy Jamukha once and for all, and in 1206, the Mongol tribes proclaimed him their supreme leader. From there, the bloodshed became historic.